My name is Laura Wooldridge. I am the 57-year-old mother of 4 grown sons. I have 5 grandchildren, 5 3/4 grandchildren. There'll be one more June 12th. And last September, I had my annual mammogram that it wasn't actually annual. I had skipped the one the year before that, and I was on my way to see my OBGYN in a couple of weeks, so I went and had my mammogram. 5 years ago, they called me after a mammogram and said they wanted more views and an ultrasound, and that resulted in a biopsy, which was a negative result. But I continued to have my mammograms at least every other year, if not every year. And so I went in September. They called me back for more views and an ultrasound, and then they, based on the ultrasound, recommended a biopsy. They said they found 2 calcifications. The biopsy experience was difficult. They were trying to get both calcifications in the same view for the biopsy. So the technician would compress my breast, step aside to take the x-ray, step across the room to read the x-ray, come back and release my breast and compress it again to try to get both calcifications. I lost count at 8 compressions. And after the biopsies, they take you in for a mammogram view, standing up to make sure they can see both of the chips that they've placed, and I was done. I couldn't stop crying, and so I sucked it up because I didn't want anyone in the waiting room to see me crying. Sucked it up, got out of the waiting room, and as we're walking to the parking lot, I'm behind my husband, just sobbing again. It was a long, bad day. I expected not to hear anything for 3 or 4 days, and my OBGYN called me the next day and said, "Laura, we weren't so lucky this time. They found cancer in both of the calcifications." And I was shocked. I nursed all 4 of my babies for a year. My husband had a vasectomy when the youngest was born, so I never even had to go back on birth control. I have no family history of breast cancer. I never, ever, ever expected to hear the words, "You have breast cancer." And within a week, I was in front of Dr. Pisano. My 3rd son was very seriously injured in Iraq 10 years ago. He was driving a lead vehicle in a patrol, and an IED exploded underneath and shattered both of his lower legs. And they're still attached, but there was a lot of plastic surgery involved. And in fact, they transplanted one of his abdominal muscles to the outside of his right leg, and he was in intensive care for about a week after that surgery. And they were continually checking with a Doppler machine for blood flow through his transplant. So I've been through that experience. So when Dr. Pisano was talking about transplanting my abdominal tissue to my chest to build me some new breasts, I understood the process of continuing to check for the blood flow and what it would be like to undergo the surgery. His explanation was clear and concise, and I knew immediately that PRMA was where I needed to be, and that this was the way to go forward. My surgery was scheduled for October 25th, and I underwent a bilateral mastectomy with abdominal tissue transplant reconstruction. I was in the hospital from Wednesday until Saturday morning. Surgery day, I believed surgery would be 4 to 6 hours, and I expected to be in a hospital room eating ice cream mid-afternoon. Unfortunately, it didn't go quite that smoothly. They had closed me up, but they were, Dr. Garza and Dr. Pisano were not satisfied with the blood flow in one of the areas of my right breast, and so they came out and told my husband they were taking me back into surgery. A couple of days in the hospital, I did all my laps. If they said I needed to walk 3 laps 3 times a day, by golly, by the end of the day I was doing 4 or 5 laps, because if this is what is going to make me better, then this is what I want to do. So I went home believing that I would bounce back quickly. I believe one of the best parts of the process at PRMA is the pre-surgical meetings with the nurse. Kathleen is amazing, and she carefully laid out everything I would need to do to have the best recovery experience possible. And she wasn't kidding. From the preparation that begins 2 weeks before surgery to every single step afterwards, I'm so glad that they didn't say, okay, go home, you're going to be sore for a while and then it'll be better. I was informed. I'd been home a few days, and I know it was right after the drains were, the breast surgical drains were removed. The next morning I had quite a big patch of blood on the side of my bra, and that of course will lead you to an instant panic. And I emailed Kathleen that morning and said, I've got some blood, and a friend of mine took a picture of it and I sent it to her. She showed Dr. Pisano the picture. She responded to my email. It was my first time to be treated via the internet, and I liked it. Knowing that they were available, that I didn't have to call and wait for a call back, because the system is set up here such that Kathleen's able to check her email throughout the day and be available. That was my first really scary experience at home, and they put me at ease so quickly. And I knew that they were still watching out for me and caring for me, even though we were on opposite sides of San Antonio. I've never been motivated to take care of my physical self like I am now. I don't want to get 5 years down the road and have breast cancer be no impact on my life other than my scars. If I'm going to go through this, I want the challenges and the fears and the success to be reflected in how I take care of myself and my family.